And speaking of arcades and games that, some people find easy, some people find difficult, I have not played a single version, arcade, home version, old school, 3D version, or even the brand new one of Mortal Kombat, and could I say it was ever easy? I have had trouble with every last one of them.
Yes.
Back in the day,
yeah.
I'd blame it on the block button. The block button was an idea that was very foreign to me. Everybody else, you press back. But I got used to block buttons thanks to games like Soul Calibur, so even after that, there's some sort of execution to all the more...
I blame it on Guro being a cheap bastard.
Well, there's that too. And all his many clones and variants.
Yeah, every single one of them.
There are instances where they make a boss with the ability to spam moves, and there's just no way to counter them.
All the SNK fighting games are notorious for having some of the cheapest bosses in video fighting game history. But I've beaten a lot of them. I've beaten Goodman. I've beaten Ignis. Why am I having so much trouble with Goro and Moloch?
It makes no sense how I hit to the right-hand man, and he just stomps me. He beats my ass. And then I get past the right-hand man, and I crush the Shao, or whatever the hell his name is. Shang Tsung. I smashed him, and it's just like, was this super strong right-hand man? And then I get to the boss and kill them on my first try.
Well, the only thing that was really cheap about the original Shang Tsung was his fireball spam. If you could get around that spam, he wasn't any more difficult than the rest of the characters, because that's basically what he was, is the rest of the characters put together.
I got a fighting game that probably many people don't hear about, Eternal Champions.
I was actually going to mention that one.
Oh, man. That final battle is torture.
I've never even made it to that final battle.
I did not win, but I made it to his final form, and I don't see how you could win, because you have to fight every single person in the game and then fight him.
Mm-hmm. On the same life bar.
On the same life bar.
And to let everybody else know, this is one of the only fighting games where you have limited special moves. You actually have a meter up in the corner that looks like a little yin-yang clock, and you can only use so many special moves. They can use them all day long. That was part of the difficulty. The computer never ran out, but you had a limitation on how many special moves you could perform at any given time. If it wasn't for that game would probably be a little more bearable for a lot of people. And here was another thing. The fact that the arcade mode, which is the only way you can, actually beat the game, anytime you lost a fight, you didn't hit the continue button. You had to fight the guy you just beat prior to get back up to where you were again.
Yep.
Oh, hair pulling galore.
Hair, torture, biting controller, banging head against wall, insanity.
But it's still one of my favorite Sega Genesis fighting games.
Yes it is.
The
fatalities in the game were just way better than Mortal Kombat. They were well thought out.
They were certainly different.
Mm-hmm. But the fact that everybody in the game was dead, technically. They all died and they were fighting to come back to life.
No amount of time in the practice room ever prepared me for fighting the rest of that game. But, as much as I'm a fighting game fan, I'm not particularly that fantastic at fighting games. So, I don't know. Maybe that was just me. But I know other people had problems with it.
I know when I was a kid, I grinded the hell out of the game. I played it until there was nothing left to do. And then I played it even more after that.
Well, I feel like since it had been on my what have you been playing list for a few weeks, I should mention Dark Souls.
Dark Souls and Demon Souls are both notorious for being difficult for people.
Now, I never played Demon Souls, but I do play Dark Souls, and it is pretty difficult. It's mostly, I think it's easier depending on how you build your character, because it took me forever to kill a boss, and I talked to a friend that was playing the game at the same time as me. He was right around the same level, but he had been upping his his strength instead of his life bar, which is what I was doing, and he killed the boss in 3 hits, and I had to hack away at it forever. So I think stuff like that makes the difference. So it seems like it doesn't have to be difficult, but it is depending on how you build your character and what you're going for.
I don't imagine it's as off balance as, say, Alpha Protocol, that Spy RPG, where really only one build worked. The rest of them were just kind of, here's ideas we had, but we didn't have time to really flesh them out, so they're worthless sort of things. I don't think it's like that, is it?
No, there are optimal builds, and it's the class that you start as can pretty much become anything. It's basically the class that you pick determines what you get at the beginning of the game. Because you get your first weapon or item, or like if you pick Pyromancer, you get a flame gauntlet at the beginning of the game because you have to have one to cast pyromancing spells. So if no other class starts with that. And like if you pick the dragon, what the heck is it? I almost said Dragonborn, that's Skyrim. It's a sorcerer that uses dragon magic is what it's called. I don't remember the name of of it. It might just be called Sorcerer, but you get a wand because that's what you use to cast those spells. The rest of the game, though, you can be anything you want to be. Just is dependent on what you put your points into when you level up.
So it's one of those games you have to be smart about, or is it just certain builds just plain work better than others?
The only definitive thing that I was able to find is that it's pretty much a standard nobody takes resilience, because I guess it doesn't have enough of an effect on the end of the game. So I guess when you get your points, don't ever put them into resilience.
It's more of that stat that doesn't really work sort of thing.
Yeah,
I would think it would be like specific, like elements or poison or that sort of thing, but they've got their own, don't they?
You can build resistances to all of those, yes, and different armor and items have different resistances on them.
But they're not related to resilience.
I don't know, I didn't put any points into it.
You followed everybody's advice.
I did.
I think that's a major thing with super hard games. Usually, when it comes to the point where a game's so hard that you have to stop relying on what you know and have to start relying on what other people do, too.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that gets me about it is that if you get a game as open as Dark Souls when it comes to leveling up, and then you put your points into something you think is going to be cool because it sounds cool, and then they never really do anything with it in the later end of the game, you feel like you just wasted all of that power on something that you can't even use.
I feel like you got ripped off.
Yeah, and I hate that about the development process because they put some really cool things in there for stuff like that, and then never capitalize on them.
I think the only game that really... Titan Quest. Yeah, the skills. I always liked in Titan Quest how if you upped something, it was always good. It always came out to help you and became beneficial.
Mm-hmm. Some stuff was better than others, but it was hard to go bad. Diablo was kind of that way, too.
Titan Quest is pretty hard on the Ultimate version. It literally becomes strategized. You can't just rush in. The monsters will just annihilate you.
I love that game, though.
Mm-hmm. Out
of all of the Diablo 2 clones out there, that's got to be the best of them. And
it doesn't get the rap that it doesn't deserve the rap that it got.
And that's even above Dungeon Siege series and Diablo 3, so...
It is a very underrated game. But we're not talking about underrated games, so let's move on.
True. So, I know you guys haven't played this one, so I'll just throw that out there. And that's the Stuntman series. As far as I know, there's only 2 of them. But for people who are car enthusiasts of some sort, you're a stunt driver, stuck in a vehicle, and you're supposed to follow the on-screen instructions to basically film out this really long action set piece. Which, of course, they never do this type of stuff in real life. But, you know, the more you played it, the better you got at it. But it was so specific and strenuous and difficult. And I think I almost beat the original, but to go back to it now, it would definitely be like starting all over again. It is a brutal driving game, and I don't know of any racing game or driving game of any sort that could possibly top the Stuntman series for difficulty. And while we're on series, and Grover already mentioned it, let's go ahead and say Ninja Gaiden, just to get it out there. Now, 2 and 3 weren't quite so bad, but the original Ninja Gaiden is, of course, legendary. And the reboots are legendary for their difficulty. They were actually part of what brought difficult games back into the limelight again, because, yeah, they were reimagining... Well, it's more of a sequel, really. They didn't reboot the series so much, but those are considered some really difficult games, and I know Mike got used to them fairly fast, because you didn't find them that difficult.
Not particularly.
That's his
I was still reading on Target Earth, I'm sorry.
Well, hey, yeah, let's go ahead and go there. Target Earth. Not a lot of people know about this game. I don't know that the company made anything else that was released in the US. But Target Earth for the Sega Genesis.
I bought this game at the Game Exchange. I was specifically looking for an old game that was moderately difficult because I couldn't find one that I felt was just so much to overcome that I couldn't do it. So I went into Game Exchange and I told them that I was looking for a difficult game, and they just happened to have Target Earth. And I was like, oh, whatever. Okay, I'll buy that. It's a mech game. I love mech games.
It's actually kind of a rare game. It's hard to find out.
Yeah.
Mech game.
I bought it, I took it home, I played it for about 30 minutes, and I said, screw this.
Okay.
Is it stupid or is it difficult?
It's difficult.
It's difficult.
It is crazy difficult. Most people never see stage 2.
What?
Yeah, I could make it.
If you stick with it, you can get to 3 or 4 easy enough, but it is ridiculously hard, and it had some really interesting ideas going for it. It is one of the first time I have ever seen AI allies in a video game, and that was awesome. You get these little mechs coming to support you, you get these airships coming down to shoot stuff for you. There was some really nifty stuff going on in that game, and it is one of my big nostalgia games for me.
Now we do need to jump back, because you guys are talking about driving games, and Gran Turismo. You're really like, what? The gaining of the license on those games.
Oh,
getting
yes.
the damn
How could I
license.
forget? I was gonna say, the races aren't all that bad in there. Okay, yeah, the licenses.
Gran Turismo 3, hell, what am I talking about? Gran Turismo anyone getting S license is pure torture.
Yes.
You has to be perfect.
There's probably professional race car drivers that throw down the controller.
Yeah, I have never did it. I've never got gold S class.
No.
It's impossible, it seems like, but I've seen people do it. And my answer to them is, you're robots, and that there's something wrong with you.
I never really cared for the Gran Turismo series because I really like the arcadey racing games. I don't like the real-world racing games where your car feels like a car. I want it to feel like a jet engine. I prefer games like Burnout.
In Gran Turismo 3, very later on in the game, you get a fantasy car that drives like basically a jet with wheels. The game is, it's very awesome. It turns on a dime, and then the game like starts torturing you because some of them start appearing in the game too, so you have to race against them. I just remember some of the vehicles in the game do cheat, like they have some Mario Kart-like ways. There is the gold Corvette, and it's just a yellow Corvette, but I call it the gold Corvette, and then there's a red something that if you see either one of these cars, you know it's going to be pure torture. They're going to be relentlessly on you at any given time, and if you make a single mistake, they're going to be in front of you, and you're going to have a hell of a time getting back in front.
Because they never make mistakes.
No, they never make mistakes. Unless you start exploiting the game trying not to make a mistake, which usually causes them to pill out.
This almost coincides with Target Earth, but there's a whole genre of games out there that has made a pretty big emergence lately. It really originated out of Japan more than anywhere, but it caught on over here, and that's the bullet hell games. Now, we've had shooters as far back as like Space Invaders and Space War, but these are the games where there's just bullets everywhere to the point that it's not so much a shooting game anymore, it's more like a rhythm dance game because you're weaving and bobbing your tiny little spaceship through this massive array of ballet dancing bullets. And
Scoregasm.
Yeah. So you got games like the entirety of the Toho series, which is probably really what made it the most famous in the States, if nothing else, because the Japanese have never stopped making those in the arcades. It's one of their biggest arcade sellers over there. But we've gotten stuff like Death Smiles and Ray Crisis. I'm thinking of the right one. I may be thinking of the racing game. Curse you, all you Ray named games back in that time period. But there was a lot of those, and I don't see them going anywhere yet because I keep finding games similar to that on like Congregate. So I know there's still a big interest in these bullet dance kind of video games. And it's an old school idea, just basically moving and surviving.
Mm-hmm. I suck at those games. I'm not even gonna lie. I am horrible at those games.
I do better on some than others.
Do we want to go crazy old school? Pac-Man. Just Pac-Man. I found that game to be really, really hard.
But, you know, it's a game that really didn't have an end to it, so...
No, it didn't. And I know some people could exploit the AI and, basically never die until the game glitched out at, like, level 10,000 or whatever.
Yeah, but how many of those people exist?
Yeah, I know.
There's like 3 of them. That's a good topic, actually. Most of the difficult games, and you can go online and search these lists, too, most of them will list NES-era games. You don't see much of the PS1/Nintendo 64 era on up. I mean, we've mentioned most of them, really.
Oh, wow. Squaresoft and Heiser. That was a shooting game. Spaceship game.
Oh, Einhander. Yeah.
Einhander. That game was psychotically hard.
I don't remember having too much trouble until about that middle point. And it's like, oh, you thought you were good, huh?
You thought you were good? It just comes to the point where just shit is flying everywhere. It's a game that I honestly say I cheated and made it so that you could take 5 hits per life. I still had to play the game like 10 times before I won. The final level is just madness. It's just, they're sending everything at you. They're sending all these ships, they're sending other Anheisers at you, and how the hell I won, I don't know. It's just, you just dodge and pray.
Sometimes that's all it takes. Mm-hmm. And speaking of shooters, gotta mention this one, Silver Surfer.
Oh, yes.
There is only 2 reasons anybody remembers that game. And one, for that one kick-tail song that is probably one of the best on the NES. And then the other is the difficulty. The one-hit death, and you're not exactly tiny. You hit a wall, you're dead. You hit an enemy, you're dead. You hit a bullet, you're dead. And guess what?
Nothing, you die.
Most of the screen is filled up with one of the things I just listed. Brutal game.
Yeah, the game is...
While we're on shooters, what about Ikaruga?
That's one of those bullet hell games. I don't remember playing it myself, though.
I thought it was difficult.
Was that GameCube? I know it was arcade.
It was GameCube, but I believe you can get it on the Xbox Live Arcade as well right now.
That's the one where you switch colors, right? And you're invincible with blue bullets, and then
you switch.
Okay.
Yeah, you switch polarity.
I know I probably shouldn't be mentioning a modded game, but the modded version of Final Fantasy Tactics, that game is literally so psychotically hard that I can't play it. And I love Final Fantasy Tactics. I was like, oh boy, hard mode for Final Fantasy Tactics. I was just like, oh god, this is not hard mode. This is insanity. They have increased the AI's intelligence to the point that if you don't kill the AI within a certain amount of turns, they will kill you. And this is like that every single damn battle. They work like a team. The AI works with each other. I mean, usually they would wander off like idiots and try to go after somebody. No, they usually all stick together and try to wipe you out, and they do it very, very well.
Well, since you're mentioning modded series, that's another thing that kind of got the whole difficult game going, is the Kaizo Mario.
Yes,
a buddy who ROM hacked emulated versions of Super Mario Brothers, or Super Mario World rather, to make the most difficult challenges you could possibly imagine. And this caught on, so other people started doing the same thing, and then other people started doing the same thing with game making software, and thus I Want to Be the Guy was born, which is probably definitely on everybody's top 10 list somewhere.
I Want to Be the Boss.
And yeah, do you know how many I Want to Be the Guy clones are out there? There is a guy, Justin TV / Twitch, who that's all he does, is he plays through these I Want to Be the Guy and I Want to Be the Guy clones like Boshi Time.
Boshi Time
all day long.
After him.
But yeah, that's what
they
he
were
does.
so impressed with his name is Boshi, and they were so impressed with him doing that the maker made I Want to Be the Boshi.
Now there's quite a few guys who does this type of stuff. There's a Russian fella, I completely forgot his name, everybody knows him. The one I'm talking about is Geezer.
Yeah, Soger made I Want to Be the Boshi.
Yeah.
And the final boss on the I Want to Be the Boshi is arguably the most hilarious boss and one of the most hardest bosses I've ever seen. The final boss is a box of oatmeal. A box of oatmeal that will whoop your ass.
Has to mention the Sonic the Hedgehog fight in that one. The Sonic boss fight is one of those tough ones too. But it's not just the ROM hack stuff that started doing that. Other games started picking up on the phenomenon. So you got games like N and ZZZZZ, and probably the most famous and most successful of them all, Super Meat Boy.
Don't you mean V?
I love Super Meat Boy.
Oh, it is V and not Z. Whoops! Somebody's not going to sleep.
Super Meat Boy is one of my favorite games.
I used to hate Super Meat Boy. I don't know why, but then I played Let's Play Pixels, and then I went back to Super Meat Boy, and now I'm having a damn blast with it.
It's a more balanced version of the whole thing behind I Want to Be the Guy. You can at least see what's coming and flying at you, so you know it's more about your skill and getting used to how the character moves.
I didn't mention that I've been playing that either, so...
No, you didn't.
Oops.
Now, now that you've said it, people are going to, well, why aren't you posting it, man? We want to see you fail.
I know. I always remind them all this. We're getting ready to do my switch to Twitch for something, so I'm just honestly just boggled.
Well, you take your time.
It may not be next episode, but the episode after that, I will probably be recording on Twitch what we're doing. So
cool.
So be warned. Back to hard games, damn it! I'm sidetracking us.
So I'm just going to throw out a couple of lists here. Some of these I don't quite agree with, like Comic Zone. Yeah, it's a hard game, but super hard, I don't know about. The Earthworm Jim series, once again, they're hard games, but I wouldn't call them up in the league of the other stuff we've been talking about. Check-An, the Forever Man, that might fall into the hard difficulty only because of the controller issues.
Yeah.
The Punch-Out series, specifically the first one, I can kind of buy that.
Mike Tyson is a bastard.
The famed Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde that the angry video game nerd kind of immortalized.
Yes.
Journey to Silius.
I just mentioned that, I played that Jekyll and Hyde game, and I figured it out, so it's just like, it's still a very torturous game.
Oh, yes. And then you got two other famous ones, but they're famous for very specific reasons. Top Gun is not particularly a hard game. It has its moments, but it's all about those stupid aircraft carrier landings. That's where everybody loses it. And then the Ninja Turtles. The first
Ninja Turtles.
Now, most of the game isn't too bad if, you can keep up with it, but there are certain jumps and the infamous underwater disarming the bombs on the dam thing
that took me forever to get down as a kid.
All those electrifying seaweeds.
I never had a problem with that. I did have a problem with that. I didn't realize that you could walk over a little step in the dam area, and it took me like 3 hours to figure out how to get across it.
Is that one that looks like you have to jump it?
Yeah, it looks like you have to jump it, and the video game nerd really mentioned it in one of his videos, and I was like, oh man, I feel your pain. I feel your pain.
Bart versus the Space Mutants, the first Simpsons game.
That's actually kind of hard. That game was pretty hard.
I don't think I played that one.
Not particularly good.
Fun game.
The Beautiful Joe series, talking about games that are actually a little newer. Those were pretty rough.
I never played them.
Not yet.
Yes, you have.
Which one?
Beautiful Joe.
Wait, which one?
Beautiful
I'm
getting distracted.
I guess.
Come on, you can't get distracted, man.
I'm
staring at the SimCity logo all the time, but I'm keeping it.
We're almost done. Hang in there.
I didn't play the game that much. It's difficult, kind of.
If you get the hang of it, I think you can get pretty far in it.
Yeah, you have to know how the combos work and the best times to use your activated combos, like your Mach speed and your slowdown.
And they don't hold your hand through it, so sometimes you're scratching your head out to get through something, and it's just a matter of you using the right ability at the right time.
Ooh,
I'm pretty sure I still have both of them, but it's been a long time since I played them.
Oh. Super Star Wars series.
Oh god.
Oh god, no.
Now, Return of the Jedi wasn't so bad. Empire Strikes Back is kind of in between the two, but the original Super Star Wars.
That game was only hard because of the terrible gameplay mechanics.
Were they any worse than anything else during that time period, though? That wasn't, first party. I didn't find the controls any worse than, like, ActRaiser, for example.
No, I thought it was fine.
I thought ActRaiser was easier than Super Star Wars.
Oh, without doubt.
Heck yes.
Without question.
But I mean, controller-wise. I do take that back. I remember Luke kind of runs a little faster than he should, and it gets him in trouble.
Yeah, he'll fall off of ledges, or there's some weird, like, sliding ice, like you're running on ice or something.
Even when you're not.
Yeah. I remember I quit the game. I almost said Ewok, or not Ewok, the Jawas level.
Oh, climbing up their sandcrawler?
Yeah, because screw that. That was stupid. Like, I climbed that, it took me a while, but I actually did manage to climb it, and then I got into the sandcrawler, and that was just stupid. Because they put you in this tiny little hallway where you can't dodge anything, and then they just start firing blasters at you. I remember being pretty upset about that. It was dumb.
We definitely have to cover this series. Ghosts and Goblins.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
It almost doesn't matter which one you're talking about. A little less so the Maximo series, but Super Ghouls and Ghosts and Goblins, Arcade, Home Edition, it doesn't matter. All some of the most difficult, and yet still sort of polished, action games of their time, which is probably one of the reasons why I like to point people out to Maldita Castilla, because if you long for those days of hard Ghosts and Goblins kind of games, there you go. That fits right into those. Legendary! There's a couple other games here, like Adventures of Bayou Billy, for example.
Bayou Billy?
Ugh, that was rough. Most people have not beat that game without cheat codes, I assure you.
Arch Nightmare.
Yeah, most of the Simpsons games. Wasn't there one after that?
Oh, yeah.
Virtual Bart.
Yeah. Virtual Bart.
Pain in the butt, though.
Very, very hard games.
Little mini games that like to punish you greatly. And yeah, Mike was saying the Legacy of Kain series. I haven't played so many of those. I played the demo for Soul Reaver, which is probably the most famous and popular of them. And I played the original Legacy of Kain. Blood Omen? Dark Omen?
Blood Omen.
But I've not played any of them since. So I'll have to take your word for most of those.
They got easier in the later generation of the games, but the originals were pretty difficult.
The last one, the one where they finally team up Raziel and Kain, was basically a God of War, wasn't it?
So, it's been a long time since I played that game. I used to have them all, and I sold them, and I just recently, in fact, got the Soul Reaver series back on Steam.
Imagine Blood Omen's kind of hard to find, isn't it?
Probably.
That was hard to find when it came out.
I may still have that game. I'm not sure if I got rid of it or not. I really hope I didn't.
So yeah, it's time to probably wrap this up. So, any last words or thoughts?
We could go on. It's just like everything else. We can go on for hours about hard-ass games.
Nothing I haven't said on the podcast before. I always just like to point out fake difficulty from actual legitimate difficulty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you got a point there. I forgot to think about that too.
Where they spam too many characters on the screen, or they...
That's why I don't count Super Mario Kart ever, because of that.
Yeah.
And there's some games that you could go out there and set the max difficulty on something, and it's brutal. I've heard the Halo series is really difficult for a lot of people, although I've also heard that there's a lot of people that blast right through it anyway. But I've heard it was tough. Personally, Streets of Rage 3 on its max setting, oh my goodness, that is brutal. I'm good with the Streets of Rage series, and I get my tail kicked on that one.
Yeah, any game you can make really hard by putting it on the harder modes, just to challenge yourself a little more.
Or trying to do stuff like some of these speedrunners do, like a no-hit run through the entirety of a Mega Man or a Mario game.
Oh, like on Skyrim, max out the difficulty on that game and watch it change into a completely different game.
Hey, Minecraft's bad enough for me on that score.
I don't have any problem with Minecraft with the difficulty. Everybody else in the server that we play on complain constantly. They're like, this is way too hard, we're getting annihilated. And I'm like, I don't see the problem here. Although I did have a angry zombie one-shot me with a diamond sword. Yeah,
I noticed every time that you were uploading stuff, it seemed like there was never any enemies around. Whether you were looking for them or not, they were just empty.
Yeah, that one night I was just running around everywhere, and there was no zombies. There was no monsters. But then the next night, after I was done recording and I was going to do stuff at night, dude, there were monsters everywhere. And of course, I didn't want to fight any of them. I was like, here we go. No, why weren't you here last night? Why weren't you here when I wanted to fight you?
I think some games.
That's how it works.
Right. Yes. But all in all, it's a big topic. We know we probably will get back to this because there's plenty of games to talk about, and we can get into our own experiences even more detail. But we might do that on specific games in the future anyway, because we plan on doing series reviews and retrospectives and introspectives and other such words. But all in all, that's our show for this week. Join us every Monday for the next PrinnyCast. Our Twitter is @PrinnyCast, and our email is PrinnyCast@gmail.com. Nothing really special planned for next week, but like Grover said, the week after that, it's very possible you might be hearing this live on Twitch. You poor, poor people.
You poor people. You will see how dim-witted we are. But it would be awesome if we got some people to ask us questions and stuff, and mention and quote. We can literally have a whole part of the show that has us just talking to the people.
Yeah, question and answer type stuff. We can do that.
That would be fun.
You know, we get enough people in there to ask us questions.
Yeah, first we're not going to have nobody in there. You're going to be anybody in there.
Yeah, we'll have enough of your followers in there eventually. People love their streams. But yeah, we'll see you next week.
See you next time.
Goodbye.